Bismillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah amma ba'du. This is Arabic class number 13, Ad-Darsu Thalitha Ashara, Aleph, Part 1. من هؤلاء فتية التوال يا علي هم طلاب جدد من أين هم؟ هم من أمريكا. أهم زملاؤك؟ نعم هم زمالي، هم في فصلي. أهم مجتهدون؟ نعم هم مجتهدون. ما أسماؤهم؟ أسماؤهم ياسر وزكريا وموسى وعبد الله. ومن هؤلاء الرجال كسار؟ هم حجاج. من أين هم؟ بعضهم من الصين وبعضهم من اليابان. أين موسى وأصدقاؤه؟ ذهبوا إلى مطعمي. In this chapter, that was part 1, and I'm going to do part 1 and part 2 together. And part 2 starts off with من هؤلاء فتيات يا مريم هن زميلتي. أخوات هن؟ نعم هن أخوات. من أبوهن؟ أبوهن شيخ بلال. أمهن أستاذتي. أين بيتهن؟ بيتهن قريب من المدرسة. And first, the chapter goes off a very important point, which starts the learner of Arabic off with the verbs. And one of the verbs that this chapter goes over is Jamu Mu'annas Salam and Jamu Mudhakkar Salam. Jamu Mu'annas Salam and Jamu Mudhakkar Salam. Jamu Mu'annas Salam is the sound feminine verbs, which, for example of that type of verb, you will say Muslimatun. And again, this is Jamu Mu'annas Salam, the feminine sound verb. An example of that is Muslimatun. That's the singular, a Muslim female. And the plural of that is Muslimat. Muslimat. Now when you have a verb which is Jamu Mu'annas Salam, then you add on the Aleph and the Ta. But also you gotta look at the singular first. And if the singular has Ta Marbuta, then most likely that verb, when you put it in the plural form, that verb would be considered Jamu Mu'annas Salam. Jamu Mu'annas Salam, which you add the Aleph to the letter before the last one, and then that you make it from Ta Marbuta to Ta Maftuha. That Ta that's on that is considered Ta Maftuha, and the Ta that's on the singular is Ta Marbuta. And the next type of that is Jamu Mudhakkar Salam. Jamu Mudhakkar Salam. For example, we can use the same word, a Muslim, Muslims. Muslim, that's the singular for Muslim male, Muslim. And if you want to change that from being singular to Jam'u Mudhakkar Salam, then you would change it to Muslimuna. 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 The addition of the waw and the noon. And these are the two signs of the Jam'u Salam, either Mudhakkar or Mu'annas. Is the Mu'annas, you add the Aleph and the Ta. In the Mudhakkar, you add the waw and the noon. And when you go further on to this chapter and you start doing exercises, you'll get examples of these from different words. I'm just using Muslim as an example because this word is used both in Jamu Mudhakkar Salam and Mu'annas. The next type of verb that this chapter goes over is Jamu Taksir. Jamu Taksir. And Jamu Taksir has wazn, it has scales. In the first scale of the Jamu Taksir, which is the broken plurals, is Fusulu. Fusulu. That's one of the scales. Fusulu. An example of a word under that scale is nujumun, the stars. Nujumun. One of the second scales is fi'alun. Fi'alun. An example of a word in that scale is jibalun, the mountains. Jibalun. The next scale is The next scale is fu'alun. Fu'alun. An example of a word in that scale is tujjarun, merchants. Tujjarun. A next scale under the scale of Jamu Taksir is fu'ulun. Fu'ulun. And the proof of that is another word used on that scale, rusulun. Rusulun, messengers. Rusulun. Or jududun, which you heard in the chapter. Jududun. A next scale under that is af'alun. 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 And an example of that is the word aklamun. Aklamun, which is pins. So these are the scales of Jam'u Taksir. Now, another point that the chapter deals with is ha'ula'i. Ha'ula'i, which is the jam for hadha and hadhihi. This is the plural word for hadha and hadhihi. Hadha and hadhihi. And the qaida is inna ha'ula'i jama'un hadha wa hadhihi. And the next point that the chapter goes over is ad-damiru ga'ibaini hum. The damir of the third party damir, or the damir of being talked about. They usually call it in English the third party verb, the third person verb. In other terms, it's also called the verb of being spoken about. You're being absent. Ga'ibain. And some of the proofs of this is, example, in the singular form you have Aina mudarrisun huwa fil fasli. Huwa fil fasli. Now if you change it using the damir hum, the damir ghaib, hum is Aina mudarrisuna. Here we go again. We're using the Jam'u Mudhakkar Salim. Jam'u Mudhakkar Salim. Aina mudarrisuna hum fil fasli. Hum fil fasli. Hum fil fasli. And another example of this is you will say to a person, Ahadha